my background is in both prosecution and as a chief probation officer. I have been in some of these people's houses, and so when they started buying incense, I was somewhat surprised because, to be honest, incense is not something I normally found in their houses. Are there probation officers in this room? Yeah, you've been in those houses. How many of them are full of helpful incense? Not many, unless they're trying to cover another smell, which would normally be what we call the herb, or California's medicine, or the meth lab. You can't cover the smell of a meth lab, it's stinky. That's not true. I busted one in the middle of a pigsty, and we could not smell that. So, what's in these? Well, there they all are, right? Now, you can tell by the cartoons and stuff, this isn't marketed generally towards young people. They only want this to be towards, you know, grown-up people. That's why they put the zombies and stuff on there. I like Santa's sled. That gives you a little happy feeling, right? Who are they marketing this to? Oh, our 18 to 25-year-old little love bugs who don't have any judgment anyway, right? So here's the stuff they put in it. These are listed ingredients. Basically, a whole lot of floral stuff, weeds, stuff I pull out of my yard, stuff like that. And it's usually leftover junk, and they throw it all in there, and it has nothing to do with anything. It's just junk. Blue Egyptian water lily. Most of those are planted along the freeways in California. They're agapanthus. I mean, there's nothing there. So they throw this junk in there and a little vanilla and a little honey so it doesn't stink quite as bad. And then they spray it with these cool things right here. And there's a variety of these recipes, and they go on and on and on and on. There's well over 100 at this point that are known formulas for artificial cannabinoids. And these artificial cannabinoids came out of pretty productive research that we were looking for as people were attempting to find out what it is about cannabis itself that may actually have medical application. And then they started to get loose on the market because many of them produce the same function as cannabis but didn't show up in drug testing. So, oh happy days. So up they pop. But the problem is each one of these formulas is slightly different, and every time you play with chemicals and you put it in the ultra chemical sensitive area of the body, your brain, we're getting different outcomes, we're getting different responses, and it's very, very difficult to predict. You can find these things by your friends, normally who you met in juvenile hall or jail, who told you about a really good idea because they never make a connection between why they're in custody and what they're using. The head shops. I've gone into local Stop and Robs and seen them for sale. I always ask them, do you have any idea what that is? Oh, no, we sell a lot of it. And of course the internet, which is the major vending area for this, both overseas and in-state, in the United States, internet sites. And this stuff is trafficking very, very heavily on the internet. And as we shut it down, it pops up. I mean, until a few months ago, I went on to Amazon.com and lined up Vanilla Sky inside of 90 seconds, probably, and I could have hit one click and had it delivered. Then I had this vision of the DEA and all this, you know. But they were still selling bath salts on Amazon. It's so run of the mill, right? And so some of this stuff is just everywhere. It's promoted by the internet, by word of mouth, by the media, right? What excites a young person more than seeing something really cool in the media, right? And we get a lot of media stuff out there. Florida's now famous, right? You got the face-eating guy who wasn't on bath salts at all, but the whole country, oh, bath salts make you eat faces. I don't think that guy's on bath salts. That's not usually how they react. But bath salts got a big boost. Well, young people think that might be pretty cool, right? There's a new type of cannabis out. What do you think they're after? It's the thrill of trying it. Of course it is. So when we're doing our field supervision and stuff like that, I got to tell you, I'm on the lookout for this stuff. A bunch of kids have this stuff. They shouldn't be having it. People shouldn't have this stuff in their house. It's a no-no. So when we're doing community supervision, anything that's sold in packets of 1/10 of a gram, you got to know it ain't right. Right? $35 for a little thing like this? No, that ain't right. So then you read the directions. I always love this one. This is for botanical use only and not for human consumption. Let me write that down, right? It is really potent blend of herbal resins, extracts, and leaves. Ultra strong aromatic essence. Probation officers have been in those houses. There are ultra strong aromatic essences in those houses, but it ain't from this stuff, right? Usually from something you just stepped in on the floor. Yeah, all the POs are going, been in that house. They're never worried about how the house smells. So all of a sudden when they start showing up with aromatic essence, 1.5 grams of it, something's wrong, right? Anything that's bought in gram amounts like that, it can't be good. And this is your kill right here, and it should be on every one of your terms and conditions in your drug court. If something is marked not for human consumption, they should not have it. That's a no, right? Here are the warnings that come with it. I love this one. Most of our guys can't read this, but they've got the warning. No credit card fraud if it's not yours. Don't use your parents' or legal guardian's credit card. It's a felony. I don't know, who do you think the buyers are around here? I'll get you for attorney's fees and court's fees if you stick me. On the other hand, I will sell you the poison, which, by the way, is not for human consumption. Not for oral consumption or inhalation of smoke or vapors. I do not supply you any any instructions on how to use it. Okay, is it me? No. So, good. You affirm you are 18 years of age or older. Okay, so here it is. So, it's not for human consumption, but how to use G4 or Woodstock. Like any of them can remember Woodstock. If you don't have white hair in this room, you don't remember Woodstock. There's the eyes rolling. I see a few of you. Okay. It sounded fun, but I wasn't there. Santa's secret. That just thrills me no end. Okay, so of course they smoke it. There aren't any warnings on what's in this stuff. And so here's the story behind this stuff. They all started making it to try to find the medicine. And so a guy named John Huffman, which is the JW, the Huffman and JWH, that's the chemist who synthesized a lot of these at first, trying to find assistive cannabinoids isolated to assist specific medical conditions. And they started making a lot of it. It starts getting loose. But now there's over 100, as I said. In 2004, it shows up. By 2009, it's all over the place, and we're all starting to get hot emails saying, what's this weird stuff? What's this weird stuff? They're testing clean, but they're behaving strangely. And in 2012, we're starting to deal with it. The DEA found it 2 years later. God help them. They found it in the annual report, but they actually didn't act for a while. But they did give us an alert that something was wrong. By that time, most of us were going, something is seriously wrong with these people. Right? The reason they work is they're all THC agonists, which therefore mimics the THC and causes very similar reaction and similar bonding in the brain. However, they are not Mother Nature's gold. And so they have very different outcomes, much as some of our THC, which has been hybridized now out of California. A lot of it doesn't have any CBD anymore. It's all very, very high potency THC, and it has a different pharmacological reaction inside the human brain than the old dope from the 60s and 70s. Stuff we were raised on in Berkeley. Purple wave. Okay. So, there are generally 3 types of cannabinoids. One of them is phytocannabinoids, which is the green gold. And that's uniquely inside the cannabis plant itself. And it's what people are trying to extract and discover works. There are endogenous cannabinoids. They are produced in the bodies of humans. And when you hear people say we have cannabinoid receptors and that's why God created cannabis for us, that's actually kind of wrong. But it sounds good to them, so they repeat it. Any of you work with 18 to 25-year-old potheads? Do they give you the same lecture every week like you haven't heard it before? And George Washington grew hemp. Well, let me write that down. That's an endorsement. They look at you with a straight face and say that like, oh. The Constitution was written on hemp. Whatever. Endogenous cannabinoids are actually the neurotransmitter traffic cops inside our brains. And they actually control the way our brain is processing a lot of the other neurotransmitters. There's a friend of mine who teaches treatment called Carl Dawson, and he describes exogenous, or the outside cannabinoids coming in, as having drunk traffic cops, because it just starts flooding the system. And all sorts of stuff starts flying around. So our endogenous cannabinoids are completely different in their function and in their form than exogenous ones. So we have the ones that come from Mother Nature, and the hybridizing we do there. And then we have these synthetic cannabinoids, and that is what K2 and spice is. That's how an agonist works. We have CB1 and CB2 receptors inside our bodies and inside our brain. CB1 receptors work mainly in the brain, your central nervous system, but there are also effects in your liver, your kidneys, your lungs. And you want to start thinking about this when we're starting to talk about the people that we know are using this. 73% of adolescent treatment admissions for cannabis are young males. So you might want to think about the interesting synergistic effect we're starting to see here. CB2 receptors are in the immune system. Now the immune system is something that generally we don't like to compromise too much because we get bad outcomes. And they're also in stem cells. And those are our onboard receptors. That's how she works. For those of you who are already here, you already know this because most of you are treatment professionals. There's almost no area of the brain actually that cannabis does not work in. The neurotransmitter sits right in there, fires straight through. We get the signals, it just parks right on there and sends a signal right on. CB1 receptors control your basal ganglia, which means your motor control and your learning capabilities. Number one thing you can always tell when a kid gets cannabis or artificial cannabinoids, if they had any grades, they're gone, right? If they had any functioning in school, it's gone. Because most of them, their short-term learning is just kaput. When I was growing up in Berkeley in the 60s, we used to call it great ideas, but they can't get up off the couch, right? And that was bad dough. Also motor control, which is why we're starting to see so much DUI THC. Memory, again, in the hippocampus, it starts to impact the hippocampus, and it also involves spatial navigation. Everybody used to joke that you could always tell, like the Cheech and Chong movies, who was really stoned because the van was going really slowly down the street. Actually, it's not true. Almost all of our large end cannabis cases are high-speed stops. They cannot tell how fast they're going. They have no spatial concept at all. They don't notice when they drive right up on the rear end of a California Highway Patrol vehicle, for instance, which causes consternation. And they really have some difficulty in figuring out some of the things that are involved around their person. We know that it also affects the cerebellum, which then gets into your cognitive functions, your ability to pay attention, your language, your emotions tend to go. And interestingly enough, turns out in male genitalia, there are a great many cannabinoid receptors. Unfortunately, we are also seeing, and has been confirmed, a very fast-growing type of testicular cancer in high-end male cannabis users. And it appears to be related. Was this wire. It appears to be related specifically to cannabis use. They found it in New Zealand. They have now replicated the research in Seattle. And so we may actually be seeing an epidemic of very young people who are going to come into us with very aggressive testicular cancer. So we need to be on that. So how does this stuff work? Well, it's just about the same as THC. Makes your heart rate go way up, blood pressure goes up. If you get loaded, you have an altered state of conscience, you feel good. Ooh. You don't know what time it is. I missed group, man. Really? I forgot about testing, too. Intensive sensory experiences, cognitive effects are damaged, and of course, again, the short-term memory. So sometimes they're really telling you they forgot and they really did, because if they're stoned. And their motor skill activity is down, and the reaction times are bad, which is why they're involved in traffic collisions. Here's our other problem. These aren't all made by PhD level chemists, and when they've actually done some of the testing on some of this stuff that's been seized, it's 100 times stronger than other formulas. And so they're really playing with a loaded gun here. We don't know what the strength is of the various stuff as it comes out. Some of the stuff is made in bathtubs and sprayed on people's weeds, and not my weed, their weeds. So it's very, very strong. And as we know, we're getting psychotic effects out of some of the very high THC weed that's coming out of Buffalo, that's coming across the border from Canada, some of the stuff that's coming out of California. The THC is so strong that people are reporting to emergency rooms over that, let alone this, right? In 2001, emergency room mentions for THC overdose exceeded those of heroin in this country. And that was a sign that the THC was getting pretty high. This stuff is, on some occasions, 100 times stronger than that. So some of these people are taking a heck of a trip. We know that it's treatable. We know that the dependence syndrome is very similar to marijuana. It's not a lot different. We know that the withdrawal syndrome is one of those long, protracted, miserable things that we see with marijuana. Longer time, sleepier. You get a flu-like feeling. 3 to 4 weeks out, you never make the connection that it's the marijuana that the court told you to quit smoking, so you dose a little bit to feel better, and you sort of trickle down because everyone knows marijuana is not addictive because they read that on the internet. And so they won't have a problem quitting, right? And so that the syndrome is very, very similar for both drugs. The one thing we are seeing different, the high is a little shorter, and they're increasingly restless and aggressive. So they are an officer safety issue, a little more than we would see normally with a pothead. Now, I've seen really, really bad violence about marijuana, but it's always around the mother plant or the garden. It's never about being stoned. That is not true here. Okay, guys, you're not from a good growing region, or you would have already known that. All I'm saying is you get near the mother plant, you take your life in your hands. And it doesn't give you the munchies, so you're not going to catch them at Krispy Kreme. Doesn't mix well with alcohol. The myth that pot smokers don't drink alcohol, myth. Myth. Once we started running ETG underneath the THC test, it was so shocking. They forgot to mention they were drinking too. But it turns out it doesn't work that well with alcohol, this artificial stuff. And it costs more than pot, so I just do not understand why anyone would want to hurt California's economy by not buying the real thing. Legal status. Well, the DEA found it, so they made some of it illegal. But the problem is that every time we change the law, we change the formula. Every state has different responses. The feds have different responses. The minute we change, they change. And since there's over 100 formulas before they even started at this, and they're still researching like little dogs, that we're just going to continue to have this problem. Also, our ability to test it. So many of the drug testing labs now are testing for over 60 separate components in order to identify the use of these drugs. They can't afford it, they can't do it. The time is endless to do that for these labs. And while some of them have certain things in common, they're starting to remove those common elements, so it's even harder to detect. So there you go. Whoever made it illegal, it feels good for them, but it's pretty much irrelevant. They change, we ban, they change. So we just make our program rules. You are not to ingest any item which is not for human consumption. Because the only way they can get around marketing this in the United States is to market not for human consumption. Right? So the minute you see, are you over 18 and this is not for human consumption, it's 1-800, probably bad for you. Right? And we see exactly the same thing with bath salts and spices. Right? Same type of thing. Once again, are you over 18? It's a felony to use your parents' credit card. Clue. And this is not for human consumption. It's to make your room smell really good. Now, I remember my brother's rooms, and I remember my son's room. Nothing good came out of there. I go in with a hazmat suit and grab those socks. Tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I know it. Parents are all shaking their head going, I've been there, Okay, for those of you who have a chemistry background and just love to see molecules, there they are. Here's the real honest-to-goodness herb. California solution to all things. Here is HU. You can see he just slightly changed it. Here's JWH. This is it on its side as he's starting to play with these to run molecules out to see what he can learn. Well, there's a bad piece of data. Over a third positive on juvenile tests are coming up at regular talks. This is one of the big labs in the country. I mean, they process pee like there's no tomorrow. And if you've got a juvenile urine test, 1/3 of them or more are going to come up positive for spice or THC. And those are the ones they can detect, right? Not the ones that can't detect. So this really speaks to us being just a little more assertive about our community supervision and getting out there. And as we know, the military has been just having a devil of a time, including all of the military academies who started running these tests and discovered that some of our high-end officers to be might be loaded. Personally, I was shocked and dismayed because some of them are going to have their hands on a button that's really important. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so drug testing. How are we doing? Well, we're doing the best we can, but this moves faster than we can move. The FDA hasn't approved a lot of these tests, so when you're trying to detect this, you've got to be real careful about what you're doing and how you're responding, because are there any prosecutors in the room? You might not be able to prove it. And as a former prosecutor, I have a severe and deep allergy to losing. So as we evolve and we get better, we'll get better tests, but some of them are not fully admissible. On the other hand, there is enough of a probation officer in me to know how to deal with this. The test comes back. Now, all of you who work with our clients know that they cannot stay shut up for that long. And I did the same thing when ETG came out, right? You just put it in front of them and you just say, somebody slipped it to me. All right, I tried it. If you have a positive test with admission, it comes in. So you want to kind of work that issue a little bit. We're not obviously going to punish them for the use necessarily, but if they lie and I can prove it, they're toast. So this is to be expected, and our response has to be appropriate to what it is we think they're doing, right? And if it goes on much more than that, then they're trying to pull one on the court, and that is a bad thing. If it seemed like a good idea at the time, that's one thing. Okay? So we have no standardized methodology yet for testing. We don't know if it's LC-MS, NS, GC-MS, or any of the other MS chemical things that all these little drug testing labs guys like to do. The CAT-FUD Association of Forensic Urine Testers, or whoever they are, that spend all their time playing with pee. We don't have the standardized cutoffs for these things. We don't have proficiency testing. We don't know the detection window, how long it stays in the urine. And we don't know the cutoff level exactly. And each one of these is going to be different, right? So we have to be very, very careful when we accuse somebody to be sure that we've got good quality evidence, because we don't want to build resistance. On the other hand, we do know a third of them, little darlings, are hot. Creates a difficult challenge. Okay, here's your update. Legal update. Yay! The feds can act more quickly on bath salts and banning sale on online and local retailers as we're about to hit bath salts. Alternative control strategies, obviously, for spice and THC. Your community supervision really has to increase. And I'm a big believer in community supervision. I teach that for NDCI. I'm a big believer in the Fourth Amendment waiver and visiting them anytime, day or night, with or without probable cause. Showing up their door and saying, hi, thinking of you. What's in your house? But more now, I suggest that we start looking at these, the little cell phones, get into the internet cache, because the little darlings are ordering on their sister's computer or somebody else's computer, and they're finding all sorts of things that they are smart enough to hide, right? They might actually have real potpourri. But you've got to start to get aggressive about your community supervision and look in places where you hadn't looked before, because there's a lot of this going on. And if you can do one-click ordering and get it sent to an alternative address where the parents are really cool, man, you're going to have a problem. So I want you in the lockers, I want you in the home, I want you in the car, I want you everywhere, because it's almost impossible for us to get this solely by testing. They've really got to think we're crazy. We're going to show up and search their socks. Get the clean ones. But they really, it's a serious problem. Even more serious by the next step. We're going to discuss bath salts. And so we've really got to get much, much more aggressive about our field services. Police, probation, parole have to be out, have to be on this, because it's something we're not going to catch by way of science. We'll always be behind. And it's going to be a serious problem ongoing. Make sure we put a contract in that says no synthetic cannabinoids for your toast. Establish a date, certain testing date, and tell them. You know, we ran all of ours underneath and said, did we tell you there's a new test? Right? And the whole curtain's going, you can see them all puckering up. You want to be sure that you tell them there's a new test. You're going to be picking this up, and all of a sudden there's a large line of confession to be had. You know, yeah, we like that. And then we want anybody who looks like they're being weird, start to pull them out. They did it in several drug courts, one in Louisiana, one in Missouri, and it was amazing how many people. And then the first week, when the positive test came back, then there was a long confessional that week. One guy just got up in line and said, "You're probably taking me to jail now." I take that as a confession. Okay. And we want to make sure we provide the opportunity for them to self-report first. When we catch somebody doing this, you want to bring them up front first, right? Nail them in public. Nail them in front of everybody. You want to make an example of them, not in a shaming way, but in a do not do this way, because they're perpetrating fraud upon the court intentionally. Yes, sir?
When you say put a prohibition against using it when you say they're toast, are you suggesting one time discovering a person's using it, that they're out of the program? Or
No.
what do you mean by toast?
No, but the next time, yeah.
So 2 strikes and you're out, and the first time?
I would be very cautious about that, but it's not an addictive process. So unless they've been using it a long time, all they're trying to do is sustain addiction. So it's really a team decision to me to see how far they are and how far they are in treatment. But if they're far enough in treatment, and if the treatment effects the dose should have taken, the dose effective treatment should have taken, and they come up dirty, they're not working. They're doing. And they're doing you. And they're probably spreading the poison in your drug court. So it really depends on where they are in the program. When they're first new, I expect them to do everything stupid that was ever done under the sun. That's their job at that point. And their job is to sustain their addiction as long as they can, because they think that, drugs are their oxygen. Quit breathing. Just a minute here, you'll breathe, right? I mean, it's that important to them. But if they're down in my program 8-9 months and they come up positive for this stuff, sell it somewhere else. It's fraud on the court.
So you'd suggest termination in that case on the person?
Depending on the person, you bet. I'd line them up in front of everybody and strike with a lightning.
We have participants reporting that it is highly addictive to their environment.
It is. Some of it is. But if they're far enough down in treatment dose, and we've been treating them for THC and the other drugs, and this is a discretionary move on their point to simply blow by your drug testing, that's a different issue. Because once the locus of control starts to shift, that's when your response changes. Because then it's deliberate. It's not a function of the disease itself. And I always look at the dose effect, how far we are down in treatment, because when the dose effect starts to take place, and they're starting to assume the locus of control over their disease, and then when they start doing this, it's something else. It's the single finger salute. I'm on tape. I need to be really careful. Okay. Now, there's another set of designer drugs out that are more concerning. And these are the ones that have come to be known as bath salts. And we use it as a generic phrase because bath salts was how they were first marketed. But they market it under all kinds of other things. Fertilizer, pesticides, butterfly attractant. Who thought of that? Wait, butterfly attractant. I want to attract butterflies. Okay, but they've renamed it about 50,000 things, but it's all, and that one, so in case you're really stupid and you can't figure out, wow, I'd like to attract butterflies, it's called AMP. I'm going to attract amped butterflies. Well, maybe not. Bath salts is a lot of water-soluble products. This is real bath salts, okay? They come in like 16-ounce containers, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, big containers. This is bath salt. This is what happens with the other kind. You guys familiar with this guy from Pennsylvania? Yeah, isn't it? Yes? Well, this is an unfortunate outcome, and you can sort of tell by the way this is. You can tell this is the methamphetamine variant, because you can see the picking and the punding, which has happened, because he's got skin bugs, basically. He's got punding going on, it's involuntary reaction. He was on a long 3-day binge. His neighbor had a little pet pygmy goat. He apparently developed a need to have an interpersonal relationship with the pygmy goat. He had sex with it. When they found him, he was covered in the goat's blood. In women's underwear with a porn magazine, the goat was dying, and there was blood all over him. There's a phrase that we use for this, but it's how bad is this type of bath salt is goat bleaking bad, because this guy, as you can tell, completely altered. He was completely altered, and he was doing things that were wholly inconsistent. And frankly, to be honest, we're lucky that only the goat dies, because the downside of often these drugs is tachycardia, and they die. We got onto this one actually by way of emergency room reports, because people were showing up at the ERs completely freaked out, and the ER didn't know how to address them particularly. The ones who actually had the best data so far is Michigan. Michigan was started counting it like mad, and we could see that people were coming to the ER way too often with these uncontrollable seizures and fits and high blood pressure, and they were just going off the chart, and it turned out to be bath salts. This started over in Europe and got over here fairly quickly because of the internet. Such a blessing. So here's every way. This is the MDPV form of the drug. There's more than one form. This one is a psychoactive drug that forms also as a stimulant. Norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitor, for those of you who are little science geeks. It is 4 times as strong as Ritalin, so you can tell already who it's going to appeal to, right? Okay? And it is a research chemical, which is, of course, why all our young people are snorting it. There is no history of FDA medical use for this. It's a research chemical. And so one day somebody said, wouldn't that be fun to use a research chemical? Oh, that's a good idea. Let's snort that. Very popular in Europe. Snorted like cocaine. Really, really addictive. It has been legal until recently. Unfortunately, it also really makes people sick. It can blow your brain out, basically. Truly adverse psychiatric ramifications, including paranoia, psychosis, some schizoid type of tendencies come out of it, and people die of generally heart and high temperature, high body temperature. The other one is mephedrone, and for those of us who've missed it, it's a cousin of cat. The 2 big forms now that we're seeing are mephedrone, and if you were to go on Aeroid, you would see discussions of both forms. The mephedrone form is actually very close to the cat plant, 2 to 4 hours, peak in 30 minutes. Makes you feel a lot. It feels a lot like ecstasy, so it feels really nice. Has that warm, fuzzy feeling while you're up happy. And so you have this desire to have a close interpersonal relationship with whatever's near. Phone booth, whatever. So it feels real good, and they get way loaded. Unfortunately, tremor, shortness of breath, loss of appetite, changes in body temperature. Hot flashes, sweating, they stink when they've been on a run like there's no tomorrow. And if they've been on a run, you'll see a lot of bleeds, but that's normally just the snorting. Some people are actually starting to smoke and slam it, you know. But peripheral vasoconstriction, chest pain, hypertension, tachycardia. This, of course, is the emergency room party. When it feels like their heart is coming out of their chest, someone usually says, "Oh, Kimmy, I don't think this is working well. Perhaps we should go to the ER." And then they dump them on the front porch of the ER. One of the great concerns about this one is, as opposed to the MDPV, when the methadone version is associated with successful suicide attempts. It's not just that they feel like they're going to kill themselves, it is that they do. And so we have to be very, very cautious when we're dealing with these people when we take them off of these drugs, because almost everyone who comes off of one of these drugs, the recovering brain, they suffer from chronic depression, they suffer from a lot of problems, they're often suicidal. My drug group is predominantly methamphetamine. They are often suicidal, but not successful. These guys are both. And so we have to be very, very cautious about what we're dealing with then. Hallucinations, agitation, paranoia, erratic behavior, the kind of things that police and probation love to deal with out in the community. And but interestingly enough, they don't withdraw, but they crave like mad. So there's no negative, there's only positive, which is part of the reason why they're going happily back to it. You know, your body, you hardly remember this stuff, but you sure remember that good feeling. Okay, so the makeup, it's MCAT. They did an interesting study, and I refer all of you to NIDA Notes, October 2011. The Journal of Pharmacology and Experiential Therapeutics, whatever. They got all these propeller heads who were doing research from all across the country, and they put them in a room. You know, all the little guys who don't speak English, they just speak all the chemicals. Okay, they put them all in the room, and they said, "What is it?" There's Doug Marlowe's propeller head, Mr. Research. I am not a propeller head, but they got all these propeller heads in a room and said, "Tell us what you're seeing with this type of bath salt." And they said, "Well, we've been playing with rats. Part of the rats are dying for us." But interesting, it is mentally turning out to be a crossover between the impact of methamphetamine and the impact of ecstasy. So we're getting damage in both the serotonin reuptake system and the dopamine system. Now, dopamine is usually mostly impacted by meth. And we know that 5 to 6 years down, there's a fairly significant restructuring, and we get most of our dopamine back. It won't be permanent, but we're getting some back, right? But we also know that ecstasy appears to have an extremely negative effect on serotonin reuptake, memory, depression, right? It looks from the rats like that's what's going to happen with this. Because it doesn't just destroy them, it fires the serotonin system. So SSRIs won't work. So this is very concerning if this turns out to be true. They've got a bunch of these people in a room, and they will self-administer at neurotoxic levels. Sound familiar? With significant damage to serotonin reuptake system, resulting in damage not only dopamine, but serotonin. So this form of the drug, the methadone form, appears to be very, very bad. Now, I don't know what our message is. Please use the other one. Better for the pygmy goat than you. But this formula appears to be very damaging. Both of them will have your heart attack you, but this one, we're not going to get a lot of recovery if this continues. This isn't good. Now, there's a butterfly attractant out. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of negative reviews on Arrowhead on this one. It's too much. makes them crazy. They didn't want to come out of the room. The high was great, but then it was not pleasurable. There's a couple guys who say, oh, you know, I couldn't get it by the snorting, but then I decided to smoke it. That was just friggin' awesome. I read that thinking, okay, flatliner. But it's not getting as much good press in the user crowd as it should have. When they first found it, they tried to run it. No one knows what's in it. I don't know if they've successfully found that yet. As of 4 months ago, they did not know what was in it. It wasn't coming up for any of the standard formulas. So it's a carefully matched formula of whatever it is. It's amped butterfly attractant. Yay. All your fellow probationers, they want to attract butterflies? Yeah, just say no. For those of you who missed ketamine and Special K, it's back. There's now an artificial Special K coming back out on the market. It is another form of a bath salt. And it is coming on pretty high. And of course, since the president signed the order, I'm sure this will go away right away. But if it doesn't, we're going to have similar problems with it. It's a dissociative drug. It's going to make people detached. It's sort of a psychedelic little experience there for a while, and we don't have any good outcomes with it either. This is the depressing part. Europa, you seeing it yet? Here it comes, because we're bored with the other ones. This is now getting very popular in Europe, which is a clue for us, sold through European sources. Minnesota had one person killed last year. It was at a party, and I want to tell you, it was an adolescent, handed it to another adolescent, and that kid died. And I believe there's a homicide charge out of that now. You can tell it's a stimulant and a psychedelic, and it makes you, whoa, flash back to the 60s, probably hearing Purple Haze. Our friend Alexander Shulgin, who also made ecstasy, when we're doing our probation searches, if you see this book here, this called A Chemical Love Story, you have a problem. That's circumstantial evidence that we are into things we shouldn't be into. A Chemical Love Story. Now, 2CE is related to the others. 2CB is banned, but 2CE is not. So we're playing academic leapfrog again. Some of this is illegal, some of this is not illegal. The one that's not illegal is still being imported, and it is being used, and it is 2CE. Okay, so it'll take a while for the feds and the states to figure out 2CE is not good, like 2CB, and then they'll change it. 2CI, another one is available. Not good. Okay, Kratom. This is an interesting drug. It's made from leaves. It interacts with your opioid receptors. At low doses, it's a pretty mild stimulant. Sedative effect at higher doses, it basically gets you really loaded. They were using this actually to ease with withdrawal off some opiates for a while, but it's turning out to be its own little problem. And it is not regulated. Let's see, who are they selling it to? Here's a picture down here in the corner. Captain Kratom, 1.5 Thai caps, 16 capsules with a pirate on it. I don't know, who do you think they're marketing it to? 50-year-old business people? I don't think so. So you can tell where your drug testing population was. It's going to show up. It's going to show up on your under 25-year-olds, generally males, or some girlfriend who's hanging with them. Timmy said it was safe. Okay. You guys read about crocodile, I assume. Crocodile, we do not think this is going to get here in great amount. It may get here, but it will not get here in great amount. And that is because the abuse is very rampant in Russia, in the former states of the Soviet Union. When they were in Afghanistan, they developed a population-wide, very, very severe heroin problem. And then when the troops got recalled, some of you, this might start to sound familiar, when the troops got recalled, a lot of troops came home with a very bad heroin problem. But Russia didn't do a lot of treatment, they did a lot of get over it. And they didn't. So they couldn't get heroin in Russia, so they started making their own formulas. And this actually is an opiate substitute. It is a form of desomorphine. made with cool stuff, as you can tell. Codeine, which is OTC in the Soviet Union. Like we buy aspirin, they buy codeine over the counter, a boatload of it. Okay, yeah, which is probably the first mistake. But they don't see it as an issue. So they take the codeine, they grind it up, they mix it with gas, paint thinner, iodine, hydrochloric acid, red phosphorus. So basically these 4 things are used when I'm making methamphetamine. Except you use codeine and you make desomorphine. And it works like heroin. It's really cheap. The DEA is looking for it. But here's why it has a name. It has a name. You know, those chemicals really aren't good for the human body. But over here, before your flesh starts to come off, it actually, it's called crocodile because your skin turns to look like crocodile as it's starting to rot off. And then it just, you can see it just, there it is, it starts to fall off. And now, the part that disturbs me is look at the age. This is a very, very young person who is not going to live long. We are like way, way not interested in this one coming to the United States. Pump it powder, very popular. Yay, pump it. It's found naturally in the geranium plant. God must have left it like he did cannabis. Or as I casually point out, or hemlock. It is not scheduled by the DEA. It's completely legal, but interestingly enough, Athletic Leaves have banned it for a while because it is a stimulant. It is orally ingested. It is not widely studied, but we do know it's being abused, and there is no test for it currently. So when we're out doing our field services, if somebody's suddenly doing pump it, which is normally sold at the roid shops, the GNC, the bodybuilder stuff, this, no, right? And it's a little container, not for sale and not for human consumption. What's the word when we see something that's not for human consumption? No. Just say no. It's the only thing that came out of Nancy Reagan's campaign that was a great use. No. Okay, Jankum, everybody who's worked in a custodial institution knows this one. I cannot imagine why it is popular. Basically, you store the goodies up for a few days, it produces methane gas, and then you huff it, producing anoxia. Now, there are a lot of things that I think should make a comeback. This isn't one. Normally, this is one step down from Pruno, which shows up in custodial institutions, but for the huffers, this actually is not as uncommon as we'd like. And of course, huffers, I wouldn't even let them in the drug court because I wasn't aware of any effective treatment. But yeah, okay. So spice, it just keeps going on and on and on and on. Here's where you get your intelligence. Arrowwood. Everybody reports on to Arrowwood. Here's your list of the cool stuff, and if you can't find it, there you go, little special K. Here's the more. Here you go. Getting loaded on nutmeg. Full substance abuse list. You can't imagine how many stuff. You just do a little search, like Kratom, okay? Combined with nothing else, because if you're combining with something else, there will be some idiot that's already reported on it. Kratom with crank. Oh, what a good idea. And first timers as opposed to experienced users. And you run that up on your internet, and here are the reports. Okay, so the Wicked Devil Tea. I got no emotional insights from it. Frankly, I was a little surprised at the notion that you would get on something like that for emotional insight, but that was just me. Quite an adventure, like getting drunk and having a hangover. And now, see, they're talking about how strong it is. The extract, 20 times the extract. And so they'll report how it is, and if you're not sure how to do it, then they give you a positive dosage. Now, this is for MDMA, which we know causes, in some cases, permanent brain injury. Right? Right? Okay, so threshold is 30. A light dose is 40 to 75. Common for smaller sensitive people is 60 to 90. Do you know if you're smaller sensitive? Do you know if you're sensitive? I mean, my feelings get hurt. I can be sensitive. How do you measure dose? Right? Common, most people, 75 to 125. Large or less sensitive people, strong, heavy, onset 20 to 70, duration 3 to 5 hours, 24 hours afterwards, warning, vomiting. Be careful if you're using MDMA for the first time, it might not work out. Really? Always start low and work up, you know. But of course, once you start to use it, and then you got another tab, man, what do you want? What do you think you're going to do? It's like, ooh. I was in Las Vegas last year, and the entire town filled, the hotel rooms filled with a bunch of young-looking people. And I said, what's going on? And they said there's a rave south of town, and there are 250,000 people. And they hired the Las Vegas police to provide security. It's $100 cabs that are out there, and you cannot get a cab in Las Vegas tonight because they're distributing them all out to that site. And I'm sitting here thinking, what will you do to children for money? And then I looked around and realized I was in Vegas, which was a pretty stupid question. Because there's nothing they will do for money in Vegas, right? I mean, Helen, you're in Vegas, shut up. But I couldn't get a cab, so I was very irritated. But there's 250,000 kids that flew in to get loaded. They sold every hotel room in Las Vegas.
Who do you think was paying for that?
Oh, mommy's credit card's paying for that. And little drug dealers. It was irritating to me. So designer drugs, they're here to stay. They're not going to go away. They move faster than we can move. We're in the court system, the law enforcement system, the treatment system. We are downstream from this. So by the time we find out, they've already moved on to something else, right? And they look at us like, you are old and stupid. And so our testing is always going to be behind. We're always going to have a problem. So we've got to make sure that we get out there and get after this stuff and be in these homes and identify what it is. Because, you know, if they die, we never get a chance to treat them. And that's the part that scares me to death, is they could die on us and we're never going to get our chance. If we can just keep them alive and get after them, we have a better chance. We can't ignore this thing. Watch your cutoffs on your testing and understand that no matter how good you are, they're going to change the formula and get us again. Okay? Already did that. They're here to stay. How irritating. Oh, and for those of you who don't know, this is a new thing that we're all looking forward to. This is Zohydro. It is pure hydrocodone in time release. It is up for FDA approval. See, you're looking forward to it, aren't you? Yes, and they say it cannot be abused. You know, I thought I heard that once or twice before. But there's no Tylenol in it, and it crosses blood-brain barrier. Record case. So this will be our next opiate. It is probably going to be approved next year. And I saw this great note saying, really, how many pain relievers do we need? Because at a certain point, how many pain relievers do we need? But Zohydro, we will all be experiencing it sometime next year. It is pure. And I certainly can't tamper with it. Because the lab said so.